Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, it says nothing's inevitable. And by that he means that American grit, determination, human action, human agency, you have your hand on your own destiny. If you're going to sit there and take it, then you're going to get rolled. If you're going to stand there and fight, then we're going to win. And from the mouth of babes, we're hearing it today. Han Mei from China tells us, hey, a sneak attack in 1941 took one Sunday away. A sneak attack in 2020 by the Chinese Communist Party has taken 17 Sundays away. I want everybody just to embrace that, okay? Embrace it. And think about what that means to people that came before us and what it means to people come after. We're accepting this right now. It's not acceptable. And this doesn't mean I'm not criticizing the governors or the mayors or the county supervisors that are doing this. We're pointing our anger at the wrong people. The anger has got to be pointed at who caused this and who has enslaved the Chinese people. That is the Chinese Communist Party. It's very simple. This is black or white, and there's no middle ground. They are a atheistic, materialistic dictatorship that has ruled over their people now for 70 years in the most brutal way possible, with the Great Leap Forward that lost 30 million people, where they collectivized, tried to become an industrial power. The Great Famine that came off of that, they lost another 30 million. The Cultural Revolution, where they tried to strip down and destroy all of the underpinnings of Chinese culture and society, Confucianism, the Tao Te Ching, all of that. Another 40 or 50 million murdered. 100 million people. When America came out of the war in the great 1950s and early 60s, when we were the powerhouse of the world and had the great times after World War II, where the Chinese people were losing 100 million people, brutally starved to death, tortured to death, beaten to death. We had a guest on last week on our Descent in Hell Part 4, talked about his grandfather was a judge, was a superior court judge in a regional city. They dragged him out to the middle of the square in front of his kids, made his kids kneel next to him, and beat him, whipped him like a dog, right, every day until his wife committed suicide. That's the type of people we're talking about, right? And it's from, and look at what young Lee said, right? If you try to have any spiritual worship at all, whether it's Falun Gong, Islam, with the Uyghurs, the Buddhist, underground house Christians. There's 100 million Christians in China, underground. And I will guarantee you that that church there is more robust and more tight and more on fire than the laziness that has engulfed the Judeo-Christian West. It's from them we should take the lesson. And now they need our assistance. What do they need our assistance? They need our assistance to stop making money with these barbarians that run the Chinese Communist Party. That's what this is about. We talk about their materialism, their atheistic nature, that everything is just here and now in materialism. The West has fallen into that. What has the financial capital markets done? It's rewarded them. What have the technologies done? It's rewarded them. Mara Monahan's on here the first thing. She's been fighting this for 40 years. In 2008, who did she say the people over there kowtowing to the Chinese Communist Party? Big tech. Who provides the technology for the firewall? Big tech. Who makes the money off the firewall? Wall Street and big tech. If we want to see who's done this, we've done it to ourselves. What did Aeschylus say, the great quote of the Libyan part? Once an eagle hit by an arrow said, by my own hand I am smitten, right? That's what's happened here. We've done this to ourselves. Want to bring in now, people say, well, what can we do about it, Steve? Your hair's on fire, I got that, but give me a plan of action. Okay, I'm going to give you a plan of action. I've got from the last group of warriors who freed people, and that was the Reagan administration. Remember, Reagan came in with Kissinger and all these guys, the same exact thing in the 70s, that the Chinese Communist Party, the Thucydides trap. The Soviet Union's got a better economy. They got a better military. They're a rising power. They've got this command. They got this command economy, which all the guys are running around now. Look at the Chinese Communist Party, how they handle this pandemic. They got a system that's better. That's what this is going to come down to, their system versus our system. And I get the joke that our system's messy. It was messy in Greece. It was messy in Republican Rome. It's a messy system. Because when free men and women, they're always going to debate. Remember, there's 91% of the American people now in the Pew poll that says they understand that the Chinese Communist Party is an existential threat to the United States of America. 91%. There's not 91% of the American people that agree the sun's going to come up in the east tomorrow. And we're not supposed to. That's the whole purpose of the democracy. Sit around the table at your family. How many of you people agree on anything? That's the power of democracy. You argue it out, you fight it out, and eventually you go in a certain direction and continue to fight and bicker, right? That's the point of it. Look at India. India with a magnificent democracy. They had, 800 million people vote. It takes them a month. But hey, 800, this is why I admire Modi and the guy so much. In 800 million people, it takes them a month to count the votes, but 800 million people. The world's largest democracy. Is it messy? You better believe it's messy. But hey, as bad as India's got with the poverty and everything like that, look at the free men and women in India versus what you've got in China, right next door. Now I want to turn now to a cold warrior, Michael Horowitz. Michael was the general counsel at OMB during the Reagan administration when we win, they lose, when they took down the Soviet Union. And he has been a man on fire about this firewall. And I got to tell you, a real warrior. When this firewall comes down, and it's going to come down, Michael Horowitz is going to be one of the great patriots that do this. And this is what a fourth turning is about. All these people you've never heard about all come to the forefront. They all come to the forefront in this as you see action being taken. So, Michael, explain to us exactly. Here's what people don't get. Why have we in the West, in the United States of America, we've known this has been a problem for decades. We've actually had action plans about that, and we've actually allocated money to do this. Why is this firewall still up, and why were they able to hide behind it so this pandemic could go out and basically destroy the rest of the world?
Steve, before I do that, will you just let me make a couple of comments? Because I was listening to that Mr. Lee. You and I are very lucky people, Steve. We get to meet heroes, these astonishing people with such bravery facing the PRC, and they're going to win. You look at them, you talk to them, and you know in the end, history's going to be on their side. And one of the ways that we're going to win, as you said, is that firewall. The big thing we need to do is to get the policymakers in the United States to listen to what the communist leaders tell us. Hu Jintao remarkably said, and we haven't quoted, "I cannot maintain the stability of the socialist state if I cannot, quote, purify the internet." Many campaigns to purify the internet, and China spends billions of dollars on its firewall. The smartest kids in information technology, they go to work, if they're good enough, on the Chinese firewall system. And let me just say one last thing before I answer your direct question, because you were talking about messiness in democracies. Here's the greatest lesson I learned from Ronald Reagan. Democracies not only seem messy, we always seem divided. We're at each other's throats, arguing and so forth. And dictatorships always seem strong and unified. Reagan's greatest insight was the truth is just the opposite, that democracies are resilient. We respond to threats and problems. We solve the problems, whereas dictatorships are vulnerable and fragile. It's like, when there's a storm coming, the oak tree seems like it's mighty as can be, but I can tell you, sitting in my house, I had an oak tree fall, a 40-ton oak tree just fall right over, almost smashed our house, where these so-called weaker trees that blow in the wind, they never come down. So that's really the beginning of this effort to bring down China in the way, and peacefully to do it, the way Ronald Reagan bring down the Soviet Union, and many lessons I learned. And the key thing, as you point out, as I just said, is the internet firewall. Well, what a messy struggle it's been. I've been involved in a lot of efforts fighting administrations to pass different sorts of human rights bills, the North Korea Human Rights Act, the International Religious Freedom Act, the Sudan Peace Act, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. And I thought this was going to be an easy one, because who could be for firewalls in China? Who could be for allowing them to isolate and control their people? And by the way, also use the firewalls as tariff barriers that have blocked American companies from doing business inside of China. And you were talking about American businessmen. If you look at Zuckerberg, when he goes to China, he goes begging and crawling and pleading, please let Facebook come on Chinese networks. He'll have a long way coming, because they're not going to let him do it. They've got their own companies that have taken Facebook's business away. And Bill Gates, who I like in many ways, he was famously quoted as saying, "What's wrong with firewalls? We have pornography screens in the United States." Why? Because the Chinese firewall blocks them from doing business, and they are subject to blackmail by China in order to get their businesses allowed to operate. These are the information technology businesses inside of China. Well, why haven't we knocked down the firewall? Well, there are many reasons. One is the fear of the State Department. During the Obama administration, one of the most successful firewalls, and it's successful even though it operates on a shoestring. The Washington Post, I got a reporter from the Washington Post to ask a senior administration official, that was how he was identified in the Washington Post, "Why aren't you supporting this firewall circumvention system?" And his answer, I quote it from the Washington Post, "China would go ballistic if we did it." So appeasement of China is one reason. Second reason may be downright corruption and Chinese influence. There are signs that that may be true, but we don't have the evidence, and there's no need to go into those kinds of he said, she said charges. If we find the evidence, we'll move on it. But the third and the most interesting thing is that the responsibility for taking down the firewalls was given to an obscure U.S. agency, obscure until Donald Trump started to talk about it last week, the Board of Broadcasting Governors. It's their job to provide the free flow of information to closed societies. And they've been the most antagonistic, the most hostile. They work 24/7 to make sure that there isn't a major initiative that will take down the firewalls. In fact, the great Michael Novak, before he died, co-authored an essay with me and 12 other conservatives, and our conclusion was that the American policy on firewalls would not have been one bit different if it had been run by a Chinese or an Iranian mole. And you say, why? I'll give you the best reason I've come up with. And there's a guy who won the Nobel Prize in economics, a man named James Buchanan, and it's called public choice theory. And Buchanan said, if you want to know why bureaucracy does something, don't only look at how the bureaucracy affects the rest of the world, look at their own parochial interests of the bureaucrats themselves, because that often decides how policy is made. And this is a textbook case of that. Because the people at the BBG, who in the 21st century are running duplicative shortwave radio networks, leave aside the fact that the broadcast bias is unbelievable, but the fact of the matter is they know that if the internet becomes the means by which information gets transferred to closed societies, there's not going to be any need for people to write scripts for Voice of America and to run shortwave radio broadcasts. Well, if I have to give one reason, it's plain old job protection by the bureaucrats.
Hey, Michael, just hang over a second. We're going to ask you to stay over through the commercial break and come back. This is War Room Pandemic. Our guest is Michael Horowitz. He's taught a direct program already paid for by the American taxpayers that takes us down. No, it's going to shock you. But Michael Horowitz is going to talk about later where your tax dollars have gone to support the firewall. We're going to return on Descent into Hell Part 5. Tear down this firewall on War Room Pandemic in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I want to thank all of our distribution partners, particularly today, Epoch Times, Gateway Pundit, Michael Patrick Leahy's great newspapers up on their website, the Tennessee Star, I think he's got 5 or 6 of them now. Also, New Tang Dynasty TV, helping us distribute the show throughout the known world. We're up on Facebook on 5 or 6 sites, and of course, podcasts, over 8 million downloads, 100 million views throughout all of our distribution networks. America's Voice, now Dish Channel 219, Newsmax TV, the John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank John and the team down there in Richmond and the AV in Colorado for helping us co-produce this show. And also, remember, G News, G Media, later in the day in Mandarin. I want to thank them for helping us co-produce this show. And, of course, IRS in Nexus.org that gets the word out to all the people in shortwave radio and medium wave radio and through AM stations throughout the English-speaking world. We've gotten some great feedback. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want to hear your voices. We're going to get back to Michael Horowitz in just a second. But we've had a great clip sent to us about shutting down a church here recently, and that's now up on our site. You want to tell us about that?
One of our listeners, Bosco Wong, sent us almost immediately after we'd had the talk about Christianity in China, a video of a house church getting shut down on May 3rd of this year. I recommend that you go to hashtag War Room Pandemic. It's up there. You'll see it. It's frightening, and it shows you the power of all of you out there together putting out this information. You're showing the world what is going on inside China.
The persecution of the church in China is equivalent to the persecution of the church in first century Rome. No difference. So if you want to assist the Christians there. Also, Falun Gong, they said in the very first segment today about live organ harvesting because they make more money. Just think about that, live organ harvesting. While you're alive, they take your organ out. And the reason is they make more money. It's got a higher margin with coming out live than coming out of a cadaver. So I want you to embrace what this Chinese Communist Party is prepared to do to people.
You said the other day, why doesn't CARE or any of these organizations talk about the people from East Turkestan? You know why? Because their organs are considered to be okay under Islamic law, and the rich Gulf Arabs use these poor people as organs to go.
Disgusting. The Gulf Emirates, where are they in the fight to free the Uyghurs? Is absolutely revolting. We'll get back to Michael Horowitz in a second. We've got a lot of feedback already from hashtag War and Pandemic.
I'd like to give a shout out to some of these people around the world. Roger Brown, who is in Esperance, Australia, has been a longtime listener. We've got David Warrington from New Zealand, who's always been around. We've got Marcus Eriksson from Sweden, who's been a longtime listener. We've got Trevor Chishimbombo. I think I probably got that wrong. We got Johan Tabers from South Africa. Thank you. All you guys have really been helping us out. And, of course, the last one, Bosco Wong, who's part of the Hong Kong Freedom Movement. There's so many of you that I'd love to shout out to every day, but really you make this possible, and it's this group of people that make it possible.
The young patriots in Hong Kong, they're like the patriots in 1775, what they've gone through. 200 arrested last week. Jimmy Lee and all the senior guys all arrested, still in jail. It's absolutely outrageous, and we have not stood up yet and called that out. We've got to do that. Okay, I want to turn back now to Michael Horowitz from the Reagan administration. He was a general counsel at Office of Management and Budget. And remember, OMB is where the dollars, that's how they get assorted to the programs and make sure they're spent in the right places. So, Michael, we've actually appropriated this money. We only got a few minutes with you because we got some other Chinese nationals who are going to come on. But what you've brought up to the American people's attention is that we've already allocated this money. We've already appropriated it. The American taxpayers sit there, well, look, in a $4 trillion or $5 trillion budget, if we've already allocated, why has it not been spent, and why is this firewall still there?
Well, I told you, during the Obama administration, we couldn't go to the State Department because, as I say, they didn't want China to go nuclear. And so we had to go to this Board of Broadcasting Governors, which was out there protecting the jobs of the people who write Voice of America radio scripts. Now, even so, when we did it, I just want to tell you how terrible it was and why Tom Coburn called the BBG the most useless, worthless agency in the federal government. They were scared at one point that we might be able to get Congress to allocate 20% of their budget that had to be for firewall circumvention. So they came to me and they said, come on, let's work if you drop that effort. Okay, I'm going to give you, I want a comment from you. I'm going to go to one of the firewall circumvention systems, the best one out there, and they're going to come up with a plan. And they did. And they said, look, for $20 million, that's less than 3% of the BBG budget, we can, within 6 to 8 months, have 500,000 house church Christians in a U.S.-hosted worship service participating on their cell phones, and 200,000 Iranians having a town meeting with the President of the United States in the Oval Office. And the President of the United States with the ability to speak to the people of any country, at any time he wants to, as long as they've got cell phones, which everybody does. They said that would be true for $20 million. So we got him on the record as saying it. And still, they worked like the dickens to say, well, it's not quite, it won't be ready yet, and we didn't really mean it, and so forth. So we couldn't go anyplace. So with them. Then in comes the Trump administration. The BBG, however, is still, as you know, we tried to confirm Michael Pack as head of the BBG, and the Democrats have blocked it. But just a short time ago, I realized that we had succeeded with Congress in ways we didn't think we could. And I want everybody on this podcast to remember 4 numbers, 7050, because it took me a while to find it. What that says is that both the BBG and the State Department, and now it's the State Department whose Secretary of State is really tough on China, have joint responsibility to tear down the firewalls. And, said the legislation, you must spend not less than $60.5 million to do so. Now, the words not less than are remarkable. I tell you, from being at OMB, most of the language is always you can't spend more than so-and-so. This says you can't spend less than $60 million. And we, however, were still focusing on that crazy BBG. We discovered this section 7050, and we started to kick into high gear because we now know that it is possible. Oh, and by the way, not only did it say not less than $60.5 million, but they said to the Secretary of State, you can tap 3 different budget accounts that have more than $3 billion worth of appropriations, almost unlimited funds to tear down the firewall. So it's within the last few months that we've started to hone in on 7050 and talk to the State Department and also try to reform the BBG.
Michael, we got to bounce.
We
got to bounce. How can our listeners help you? What do you need as far as assistance from people that are watching this show and listening to this show right now?
Well, I think they need to write to members of Congress, for one thing, Steve. And one guy in particular who's been great in Congress, the leader is Tom Cotton of Arkansas. In my view, a future president of the United States. He really gets it. And tell them to do it. And they need to look. There's a really good article that was just in the Daily Caller last Thursday by a man named Charles Cobb, Kolb, and it just sets everything out there. And let me just say one other thing of what they ought to tie these letters to. Because in the past, when we tried to tear the firewalls down, the whole China crowd was saying, oh my God, China will go crazy and it'll, and they will go crazy, as you know better than anybody, Steve, because they said their survival depends on the firewall. But there's been a change. Some good thing that's coming out of the COVID pandemic. Because now we see the firewalls not only as a means of bringing information to China and liberating China, the internet is a means of protecting us from China's efforts to hide what's going on inside of China. So it's changed the whole political equation now, because now to be for taking down the firewalls is to be to protect America so that never again will 350,000 people from Wuhan be able to travel to the United States in January. We will know through the internet by breaking down the firewall, the pandemic had begun in December, and we'll be able to take action. So the Chinese know it, but the political system is now ready for change, and we've got the damnedest coalition, including some Democrats, who are out there working with key members of Congress and working with you, Steve. As long as your hair stays on fire, that's going to help us one heck of a lot on this.
Whether you don't,
there's some other people.
Listen, we've got to bounce. Just how do people get access? What's your Twitter feed? What's your website? Tell us how people throughout the world can get to more Michael Horowitz.
What you need to do is get in touch with you, Steve. But I'm just telling you again that the politics are there, because now it will be possible for people who want to take down the firewall to say, what? You want to allow China to hide itself? Pompeo just gave a speech at the G7, said that transparency in China is now an American national security imperative. Well, the way to do it is the firewall. And I got to also say we're focused on the firewall, but you mentioned the Falun Gong and the house church Christians. It's been one of the great blessings of my life to be able to work very closely with him, with a hero like Bob Fu, who was the bridge to the 100 million house church Christians, and with the Falun Gong leaders. And it's a Falun Gong system that's the best system to shatter the firewalls. It needs that $20 million to get a shot, which we're working very hard to see that it can. So that it actually, Steve, I think we can tear down the firewall before the election. And it will allow the president to make clear that while the Democrats slept for 7 years on that and appeased the Chinese, he took down the Berlin Wall of our time. So I think we're gonna fight hard. Let them read that piece in the Daily Caller.
Yeah, we'll get it all
right to their account.
Michael, we got to bounce. We got a commercial break. We got to pay some bills here. I want to thank you, Michael Horowitz, a true patriot. The first time under Reagan and now with President Trump. Tear down this firewall. We're going to return with Chinese nationals and their voices in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. We're here with Descent into Hell Part 5, Tear Down This Firewall. We've got more Chinese nationals who are going to join us in a minute, but we've got tremendous feedback. Hashtag War Room Pandemic to all of our distribution platforms. You can get to that. Jack, what do we got some community feedback?
Yes, I thought this was a great comment that someone made. Steve made the parallel between the persecution of the Roman Christians and the persecution of the house Christians, and one of our listeners from the other side of the world wrote, "The Romans persecuted Christians because transcendence threatened their legitimacy. The CCP persecutes Christians because it threatens their legitimacy too." And I think that's very clear.
That's very powerful. I want to go now to Mary, one of the whistleblowers. I want to answer that question. Mary, thank you for joining us. I understand you come on today and you're using your whistleblower nom de jour at great risk to you and your family. I have a question following off of what Jack just said right there. The CCP tells the world the reason they have a firewall is that China is ungovernable, China is unmanageable, China is chaotic, and they need, as the former president said, they need to purify the internet for social stability. Now, the question I have you're a 4,000-year-old culture in society, and you had many firsts in the world, writing and gunpowder and all this. Why, from the Chinese people's perspective, is the CCP right? Are you people ungovernable? Are you uncivilized? Can you not manage your own affairs unless they block you off from the rest of the world and block you off from any spiritual development or any spiritual inquiry?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Bannon. That's a great question. So I do have some thoughts about this. As real quick about my own background, I was born in mainland China and then moved to Hong Kong when I was around 14. And I've worked for many Chinese state-owned companies. A lot of my family members are CCP party members. And this is a line that CCP is telling we are very familiar with. Their argument is always that, there are too many people, the population base is too large in China, and then look at the Chinese history, we are always with this centralized government where democracy is not good for us. Actually, for me, this argument doesn't stand up at all, because if you actually study with great deliberation of their argument, you'll find actually it lacking key logical linkage there, and then it's not evidence-based at all. And then in terms of talking about tearing down the firewall, when I first got the topic, I had this question immediately coming to me. That is, why does it matter? Because to the free world, it's quite a simple concept that if there's no firewall, that simply means the freedom of the press and freedom of speech. But why freedom of the press and speech matters, and why freedom in China also matters to the West? I think my answer for that is, with the acceleration of globalization and this pandemic that everyone can see, the U.S. and the entire world is already paying for communist China's lack of freedom. And I strongly disagree their argument of, Chinese is not suitable for democracy, because let's look at human history. Human species are constantly seeking for a system that could keep a balanced world order. And this order, I believe, is the key to human civilization. And it's just the restraint of power. So tearing down the firewall gives a nation the fourth estate or fourth power, which is a mechanic of checking and balancing of power. Because I think we all agree to the statement that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely, because this is just human nature. And then let's again look at what the CCP sophistry is. Like, they're clever but false arguments, which Mr. Bannon, your question was. They have these arguments with the intention of deceiving. The scariest thing is that it's working to some extent. Let me just quote them. This is a popular saying that a lot of Westerners and even Chinese elites are believing in, that there are too many fake news flying around in the so-called democratic Western world. So some sort of control or censorship from the government is necessary. This is totally just, it's just a superficially plausible argument. I mean, a free environment of receiving information is not an easy job, because it actually requires people to use their brain power. And that's called critical thinking. And I think that's the key engine to drive human civilization forward, not the other way around. And yes, it's undeniable that humans are flawed and human society is flawed, and democracy is far from being a perfect system. But again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. The imperfect democratic system doesn't rationalize the totalitarian regime. The flawed system doesn't justify the existence of dictatorship. And this is not only about China. Just look at Dr. Li Wenliang, and this is not an occasional event. It's an inevitable outcome under any kind of totalitarian regime, and now it's damaging the world.
You're saying Dr. Li. You're saying Dr. Li, who was the great hero in Wuhan, who told the authorities in December of 2019 that there was a human-to-human transmission and community spread in Wuhan, and they should address it among his in a WeChat group with his other physicians. They hauled him in front of the authorities, made him, after torturing him, made him sign a proclamation, said he was a rumor monger. Right, and then was going to ostracize him and his family, and then later, when they proven wrong and they proved they lied, he became a great hero. Went back to the hospital in Wuhan and died, saving his fellow citizens of Wuhan from the disease. I want to give you a hat tip, Mary. I think you're the first Chinese national that's ever going to be penalized by the FCC, but we're greatly honored. That's truly what freedom of speech is. Last thing, I just want to ask before we let you go is, are the Chinese people ready for democracy? Do you see in your fellow countrymen in mainland, are they ready for democracy? Are they ready to govern themselves? Because, I've been around China since 1977, 1978. I have many, many, many Chinese friends there. I've lived there on and off in certain times throughout the last, 40 years or so. It seems to me that they are. If we can have it in the United States of America, right? We can have it. We can have it in China. But from your perspective, because the CCP continues to tell the elites in the world that the Chinese people are ungovernable, they're uncivilized, they're chaotic, and the whole Chinese enterprise will collapse if left to their own devices. What say you?
That sounds to me like a total joke. Just look at Hong Kong, Taiwan, or even those Chinese communities in overseas, in America, in the United Kingdom. I don't think there's a problem with Chinese fighting for democracy. I think we're totally ready for that. And I actually have a problem with some of the Westerners who are still arguing for the communist China. And I don't think it's now time for rational or theoretical discussion about oh, which kind of system is better, kind of system is not that bad, maybe. I think there's no room for this kind of discussion. I mean, the CCP is the 21st century's Nazi and Soviet Union, or combined, or even worse. But at least the free world back then knew you were fighting against these strong and evil enemies. But today, before I came onto this show, I just read a piece of news from the Daily Mail UK, where the China's ambassador to the UK, Liu Xiaoming, he denied there was a cover-up on coronavirus. And this is what he was saying. He said, you can't have this campaign of stigmatizing disinformation and smear against China, as some American politicians are doing. So I think this, without the democracy in China and without overthrowing CCP or taking down the firewall, the entire world and also America is facing its strongest, biggest crisis since its establishment. That was my thought. Thank you, Mr. Bannon.
Mary, thank you. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. Quite heroic, and we look forward to having you back on in the days and weeks ahead. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now we're going to be joined by Depo. It's his whistleblower name. But before we do that, I want to just comment to this. We hear it consistent. I think what she had to say is very powerful. It's not time for a theoretical discussion. They're at war with us. They're at war with humanity, and they've proven that. Forget if it came out of the lab or if it's part of a bioweapons program. And we've had Sherry Markson on from the Daily Telegraph in Australia, Bill Gertz from the Washington Times, reporters from all over. The intelligence agencies are looking at that. The World Health Community is looking at that. How did this thing happen? And this biological Chernobyl, what went on? But we do know as a fact they suppressed the information. Dr. Lee is the prime example. If the Chinese Communist Party had listened to Dr. Lee's voice and listened to Dr. Lee's voice in the last week of December of 2019. The University of Southampton in the UK tells us 95% of the deaths, 95% of the agony of those people that have it are going to have it for the rest of their lives, 95% of the economic destruction would have all been avoided. They could have shut this down in Wuhan at the time if they had just listened to the Chinese people, these heroic doctors who knew as a matter of fact that they had human-to-human transmission and community spread. And it takes, I think this is what's so powerful and the reason we love doing these Saturday shows, someone like Mary sits there and goes, we're beyond a theoretical discussion. We're in a hot war, okay? And you see the information war. He's in London today saying, oh, some radical, racist, nativist, xenophobe politicians in the United States are trying to stigmatize China. They're not stigmatizing China. It's about the Chinese Communist Party. And she said, let's be just blunt. This is a combination of the Nazi Party and the Soviet Union, the worst of the commissars, right? That's what they are. It's clear to the world of that. There's no theoretical – you don't need a theoretical discussion to take down the Nazis. You don't need a theoretical discussion to take down the dictators in the Soviet Union. We're beyond having a debate. This is not a debating society anymore. They unleashed by an act of commission and covering it up. We're going to find out later what they were actually doing in these labs. But we know an act of commission of covering it up, they are solely responsible for doing this. And the Chinese people are telling you that. Combination of the Nazi Party and a combination of the worst of the dictators of the Soviet Union, which had people basically in servitude, in serfdom, modern serfdom for decades and decades and decades before Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and John Paul II and the people of Poland, and it all came from those people who finally had a belly full of it and said, this has to come down. And remember, your elites with Kissinger and the Council on Foreign Relations and all these guys said, oh, no, they're more powerful people. We have to have rapprochement. We have to have détente. Let's have all these treaties to keep them in power. Ronald Reagan, who they considered a moron from California, he said, hey, how about this? We win, they lose. They're an evil empire. When he said that, the establishment in New York and Washington, D.C. literally melted down. It was Clark, not Ramsey Clark, the other Clark. The guy said, the Georgetown guy said he's an amiable dunce. He said this at the cocktail parties. Well, guess what? Donald Trump's the new Reagan, and this is the new war that we fight. We're going to return with more voices of the Chinese people on Tear Down This Wall on Descent into Hell Part 5, War Room Pandemic. We'll be back in a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
I want to turn now. We still got some feedback coming in from hashtag War Room Pandemic.
Well, again, one of our loyal listeners on the other side of the planet, he says it's 3:30 a.m. in New Zealand, and I really should be asleep. He said, but these specials are so good they could last all day long. And, just, again, it shows you why we're doing this is we want to educate the world about the evil, which is the CCP, and we're all in this together.
Look, we're a platform for the deplorables. We're a platform for the working class economic nationalists out of the Bernie movement. We're a platform for you to have your voice heard. We're also a platform, try to be a platform for the Chinese people so you can hear directly from their voice. Now we've got another part of the whistleblower, another individual with the whistleblower movement, Depo. Depo, I have a question. You've been telling me over the last couple of weeks about these 5 methods that the CCP uses to control people. Can you walk the American people and your world audience through exactly how they try to control you guys?
Okay, thank you, sir. It's a very great honor to join your War Room Pandemic. And thank you, Mr. Bannon. Thank you, Mr. Jack. And thank you, Mr. Jason, for your continued support to differentiate and separate the CCP from Chinese people. This is our lives. And, Chinese people are hostages. They are being held hostage by the CCP. And most of them are being afraid to talk about their feelings online because they are so afraid that the CCP will one day come to, one day to punish them for anything they comment online. So for the 5 methods, as Miles always talk about, CCP uses 5 methods from an ancient Chinese politician. He's called Shang, and these 5 ideas is summarized in the book of Lord Shang. Shang is an ancient politician lived about 350 BCE, and he has summarized 5. People later have summarized 5 ideas from this, and the CCP used these ancient ideas to rule Chinese people. And the first method is to, I will make it in more simple way. First method is to stultify Chinese people, literally speaking, making people stupid, deprive them of the truth, right to truth and knowledge. A second method is to weaken people, that is, make people vulnerable to the collective violence, to deprive them of any, weapons or self-defense armaments. For example, CCP will punish those people who selling toy guns online on Taobao, and the CCP will also require your real name registration when you buy the kitchen knife in supermarkets. So this is how CCP uses to control people's self-result to fight back the oppression. And the third method is that CCP exhausts its people by trying to make a living environment very hard for them. Most of the Chinese people are very desperate to make a basic living. And the fourth is to humiliate the people. CCP like to play divide and conquer game, like people to play snitch on others. And the CCP like to trample on people's dignity. And the last method is to impoverish people. And we Chinese, we also call ourselves leaks. So when the leaks grows strong, CCP will wave its cycle to rape us, harvest us. This is a very good example that Miles has told you a lot. When the CCP as a controlling party, he always tries to suppress private sector in China. If private entrepreneurs get strong, the CCP officials will fabricate the charges to put them in jail and plunder their assets. So if all these methods fail, then we'll kill them. So that is the 5 methods summarized for the Communist Party's rule against Chinese people. Thank you.
We got a couple of minutes left. I just want to ask you, I want to go back to this argument because what they tell the elites in the West, and they tell people this all the time, that the Chinese, it's too big, it's too disorganized, it's too poor, because what you see in these cities is just kind of on the surface, but they need to have this level of control to provide stability so that you can materially get out of poverty. If they don't do that, the whole China is going to collapse into chaos, civil war, back to the era of the Chinese bandits and the warlords. What say you to that, sir?
So I think this is but a political propaganda. This is a blatant lie. Chinese people, they love freedom. We know how to govern ourselves. Just check out Hong Kong, check out Taiwan. We are all Chinese, and they know how to govern themselves. They can prosper in a free world society. They know how to, Chinese people, they are not animals. They know how to govern themselves. They know how to use the democracy and the universal values to help themselves establish organized society. They know how to prosper in this world. CCP use this to deceive the world. I will try to take a very simple example. When we have a lot of human rights abuses in China, and when the foreign reporters accuses our foreign minister spokesperson, our spokesperson will respond. Do you know China? Have you been to China? Do you know that under the great leadership of CCP, we have lifted the most population out of the poverty? But that is a lie. When the CCP is wasting its money around the world, dropping money around the world to do the OBOR project, when the U.S. asked to stop the loaning from World Bank to CCP would jump out to say, please, you cannot do this because China is still a developing country. We still have a lot of people living under poverty. So this is just a political propaganda. It doesn't want Chinese people to speak freely of what their true feelings and what is their true understandings and what is their true sufferings. CCP just compress our voices. So don't believe this propaganda. It is the deplorables of Chinese people who says the truth. Thank you, sir.
Depo, thank you very much. Look forward to having you back here in the days and weeks ahead. The voices of all of you Chinese nationals today have been very powerful, and the world needs to hear this. They need to hear directly from the Chinese people. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of our production partners, and I would particularly want to thank the audience. It's you retweeting and getting this out. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. Just push it out to everywhere. Remember, it was Lincoln that said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. The world cannot continue on half slave and half free, because in their slavery, the slavery of the Chinese people have made serfs of working people throughout the world. Remember, it's the exporting of their deflation, the exporting of their overcapacity, the state-owned industries that allowed Xi and Wan Qishan to become multiple billionaires. And to take that money and to put it into the West, into real estate in New York City and London. They've stolen from the Chinese people, but they've also stolen from you. So remember, the freedom of the Chinese people is inextricably linked with your freedom. And that's why we need to support the Chinese people in this great finishing work of the 20th century, their freedom. This is War Room Pandemic, Descent into Hell Part 5. Tear Down This Wall. It'll be up on the podcast later. Please push this out to all your neighbors. Let them hear from the voice of the Chinese people. We will see you live 10 a.m. on Monday.